Okay, now we're going to put this back together. You've noticed I already have put on the front sight, and I don't think you can see it in the camera, but I have put in the channel liner. The channel liner has to go in before the plunger can go in. So we're going to drop the plunger in. Actually, that is wrong. I'm sorry. We're going to drop the plunger in. The plunger end goes in from the top with the hole upwards. Now, I haven't got it all the way in, but I am putting a little bit of oil there. Once the plunger goes in, we're going to put the spring and the little cover plate. Now we're going to need to put the rear sight in. So I'm going to switch it over to the vise so that you can see that. Just bear with me for just a minute. Let me get the camera moved. And there we go. Now that we've got that moved, we are going to start putting in the rear sight. And I think what I'm going to do is put it in from this side. I am going to use the soft end of the hammer and just give it a couple taps. Find something to depress the spring and the plate. And be careful, because that's what happens. Let me find something else that works better. Okay, now we're going to depress the spring in the plate. We're going to tap this a little bit and kind of tap it just enough so that the spring will not come out. Now once that is in, I'm going to reverse it a little bit so it's a little easier for me to tap on. And there we have it. Now I'm going to finish inserting the sight. Now I'm just going to give it some taps. I have already test fit this, so I know that it's not too snug. Okay, I'm going to turn it around. I'm left-handed, so it's easier for me to tap from this side. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to angle it a little bit. Let me go over here so I can get some light. Okay, it is pretty close to being lined up. And I think that's going to do it. Now I'm going to put in the set screw. Now typically when I removed this one, it had some red Loctite on it, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I will come back later and put a little bit of Loctite on here. But on this set screw, I will not use the super strength. I just don't want it to back out. Worst problem I have with these is people do not use the right size or the proper set screw or Allen wrench for the set screw, and they get stripped out, and then you end up having to drill them out. So this one is in. Now I'm going to put in the extractor. Okay, we've got the extractor and the spring for the extractor. I'm going to drop this in. I am going to put a drop of oil on there. And put the extractor in place. Now this particular extractor you have to slide in from the front a little bit. Now go to the top. And I think what I'm going to need to do on this one is hold the roll pin in place a little bit just to get it started. Okay, now we've got that in. They do make roll pin starter punches. I just don't have any. Okay, I'm going to check the alignment. Looks like the alignment may be off a little bit. You don't want to put a lot of force when you're punching this out or back in, either one. You want to be able to make sure that if you do, you will bend it. There we go. Now we're down almost flush, and now I'm going to find a punch that will not damage the surface while I punch this the rest of the way in. You do not want to slip. And that is in. Now we will put in the striker. Now this striker is dry and it will rub against that liner, but I do put a drop of oil in there just for extra protection. It really doesn't need it. Now you get the firing pin to that point, depress the plunger, push the firing pin or the striker to further. Okay, now we put it on the back cover. This is actually pretty easy. What you're going to do is you're going to line it up in place, hold it with your thumb, push this the plastic piece of the firing pin or the striker, whichever you want to call it, push it down, and this will, well, it should slide right over as long as you have it lined up right. There, and then it'll click when you get it pushed finally in. There you go. Now that is done. Now you can also test it. It's, you know, you want to make sure, especially after Cerakote and sandblasting, you want to make sure that your striker, your plunger is free to move. There's no restriction. You can test it and make sure your pin comes all the way out by depressing the plunger, pushing your pin forward, checking and looking into right here, and you'll see it. There's no restriction or anything of that nature. Now at that point the slide is complete, a reassemble complete. Now we're going to put in all the rest of the parts. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is put in this rear assembly with the deflector, the shell deflector. It should just drop in. You do have to be careful. A couple of these pins are free to move. You want to make sure that they are all in the right place. Sometimes you might need to maneuver a little bit, move it around here and there. And sometimes you may just get it started, you may have to put a little tap on it. I could see well, Well, I can't see. I thought I could see what my restriction is. What is stopping this from going in? I don't see anything. Actually, I may see something. I'm going to remove this little piece here. See if that is part of my restriction. And it does not appear to be. So I'm going to put that little piece back in. If I can keep my hands on it without dropping it. There, it is back in place. Okay, I'm going to look at this again. See what my issue is. There we go. I was just hitting it in the wrong place. That's all. It was nothing. Now I'm going to check and make sure that my the pinhole is lined up properly. Everything is recessed like it's supposed to be. Does not appear to be lined up correctly, so it just needs a little more. Put a little tap on it. See if that is part of the issue. Does not appear to be, but just for safety's sake. We'll try this again. Okay, that looks like we're in good shape there. Well, I thought it was. There we go. Just had a little snap in place. Now we're going to put the firing pin or the trigger in. That should go just right there, but want to make sure that everything's in the right place. Firing pin or trigger, I'm sorry, the trigger will go in. Now I'm not going to put the trigger pin in yet. I am going to put this piece in, and you'll see that I already have this little flat round spring held in place with a little bit of gun grease. Okay, and the same applies. We want to make sure that we get this in the right place. Now that is in place. There's two grooves in there where this slides on, and it should just slide down into position, which it has. Okay, now we're going to leave that alone for just a few minutes. Now there is a piece, well actually I am going to remove this piece because I almost forgot to put in a spring. And it's going to be easier to get this spring out or back in place with this out of the way. Now here is the spring. This spring will attach to one part of the trigger, the other part will attach to the pin that holds that on the trigger pin. So that's why I went ahead and removed this, because one part of this will go into the trigger. Now, just to make sure that I am putting this in correctly, you'll notice that the pin that holds the trigger in will not go into this side of the spring. So this is the free moving side of the spring. So we want to make sure that this is oriented towards the forward. This end will be positioned to on the trigger. There's a little hole. You can see that little hole there. Now we're going to put the trigger back in, slide it back into position where it is supposed to be. Put this piece back in. Now this can be the little tricky part. You can sometimes have a difficulty getting that pin lined back up to the spring. So what I will do is I will put it in a little bit, and I am going to, well, actually I'm going to take that and pull that back out a little bit. I want to make sure that it lines up into the trigger, which I can't really hold it, and let me try this and just okay. Now I've got this pin now everything, the piece of the trigger is lined up. I am going to do a little tap on this just to insert it into one side of the trigger. Now I've done that, but I went too far, so I'm going to pull it out until I can pull that spring into position for the pin to go in, because I went a little bit too far. Now, I may not be able to do this. Well, here's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to insert a pin or this tool in on the other side. Try to grab the hole in the spring, if I can do that. And if I'm able to do that, it doesn't appear that I'm going to, so I'm going to get another tool. This is a straight O-ring tool. I'll put it back in that hole, slide it through the first side, okay. Now I am able to grab it. I just may not be able to show it to you on screen, so it may take too many hands for me to do that. Okay. I was able to do that, I just couldn't show you. I couldn't do it on camera for you, but you could see that the spring is right here. the ring of the spring through the firing pin, and then I'm going to go ahead and tap this the rest of the way in. Now it's not a super tight fitting spring or pin, but it is tight enough to keep that from coming off. You just want to make sure you recess it all the way. Okay, now the next portion we're going to do is the I'm going to go ahead and fix this, push that back in place, turn. I'm going to go ahead and put in the rear roll pin. Now, if you have access to roll pin punches, make sure you use those when you're doing your final push to recess the pin. And try to get your pins about even on both sides. Doesn't really matter. Okay, now I did just discover something that may have screwed me up. Nothing intentional. But you'll notice this should have been put in first. So I'm going to remove this, remove the trigger pin, and I'm going to have to do that all over again. Okay, we got pretty much everything back in place. Now we got to mess with the spring. This is the fun part. Pin started. It's catching on something, so we're going to wiggle it, move it around a little bit. Okay, now we've got it started into a position. Now we need to attach it to the spring. This is always the tricky part right here, getting that spring to fall in place. I'm going to drop the spring. Now I have the spring again. Try to get it back into place. Can't really show this on camera the way I have to manipulate this. I think I've got it. I'm gonna couple of light taps, see if I did get it. Didn't quite get it. I will tell you this, my personal opinion. Springs are the absolute worst part of firearm assembly. I think it's going to take me 10 minutes or so to get this in there, seems like. Okay, I do believe that did it. Make sure your pin is completely recessed. Now what I need to do is attach the other end of the spring to where it needs to go. And everything is functioning properly. It's in its right place. That takes care of that. Now we're going to put the front roll pin in. Get close to the end, switch into the roll pin punch. That takes care of that. We're going to put in the takedown pin. This can be a little tricky. Now we're going to finish reassembling. We check the fit. put in the spring. And we should be ready to go. Everything's together. Everything is functioning. What do you think? Two-tone, black, tactical gray. We've got some accents, you know, the accents like the mag release, the inserts or the inlets in the grip area, the trigger. Everything seems to be working perfectly. Slide lock works. Of course, this slide lock's a little bit tight for me. Project complete, with the exception of putting the dots in the front and the rear sight, which I'm going to clamp those into the vise, do it on a vertical position. But do appreciate you watching the video. I wished it was a better quality video. I'm still kind of new at this, so hoping the next video of a disassembly, reassembly Cerakote will go better. This one the project was not that difficult, but you can see the difference that it made with the look of the firearm afterwards. And hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time. Thank you.